My name is James Abola, Assistant Commissioner, Staff Compliance, Uganda Revenue Authority.
Thank you.
Good morning, distinguished delegates. My name is Stella Nyapendi Chombo, Assistant Commissioner in the Legal Department of URA. Welcome to Uganda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robert Zohala,
Thank you. Thank you. Our guest of honor, we welcome you. And this is the Commissioners General Forum for the East African Revenue Authorities. We have just had the national anthem, a prayer, and self-introductions. I think two people I would just need to introduce is Madam Diana Kisaka, who gave us a prayer here, and she's heading the organization for the entire event, and myself, Ibrahim Bossa. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Public and Corporate Affairs, and I will be assisting your chief host in moderating this session as and when required. Our guest of honor, the Permanent Secretary of the Treasury, Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Mr. Ramadan Gobi, the Commissioner General, Uganda Revenue Authority, Mr. John Rojoki Musinguzi, Commissioner General, Kenya Revenue Authority, Mr. Githi James Mburu, Commissioner General of the Burundi Revenue Authority, Mr. Jean-Claude Manirakiza, the Commissioner General, South Sudan National Revenue Authority, Mr. Patrick Mugoya, the Deputy Commissioner General, Rwanda Revenue Authority, Mr. Jean-Louis Kalingondo, the Tanzania Revenue Authority Head of Delegation, Mr. Ephraim Ndei, the Commissioner General, Zanzibar Revenue Board, Mr. Yusuf Juma Mwanda, the ERA CTI delegation that has been here for the last 2 days, commissioners from the respective revenue authorities, members of technical committees and head of delegations, the East African Community representatives, the African Tax Administration Forum representatives, members of the Fourth Estate, the media, they are seated on the back row. We couldn't introduce each of them, but they're here with us. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the 50th ERA Commissioner General's meeting, a forum that is aimed to share information, expertise, address tax administration issues across the East African region. Ladies and gentlemen, in helping to steer Uganda's economic resilience and Uganda Revenue Authority towards a revisioned mission to mobilize revenue for national development transparently, efficiently, so that Uganda can fully fund its national budget is a transformational leader who is reinventing service delivery at the Uganda Revenue Authority. He's leveraging technology to one end and one end alone: simplicity. Simplified processes, simplified communications, simplified tax education. Everything about URA today moving forward is about simplicity. He is your brother, he's your friend, and he is your chief host today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Musinguzi will deliver his welcome remarks to you.
Thank you, Ibrahim, for your kind and a bit exaggerated introduction. Our chief guest today, our permanent secretary to the Treasury of the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Ramadan Gobi, our distinguished commissioners general from all over the East African region, distinguished commissioners representatives from the East African Community Secretariat, and representatives from ATAF, the African Tax Administration Forum, the East African Revenue Authority's Technical Committee members, and all the staff of the East African Revenue Authorities, members of the Fourth Estate, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. I'm extremely excited to welcome you to this 50th East African Revenue Authorities Commissioner General's meeting here in Kampala. In a very special way, I want to start by welcoming our guest of honor today, who is not only our leader, but is also a friend of our organization, Uganda Revenue Authority. He's been a great support. And Mr. Ramadan Gobi, we do not take your time here on a public holiday to open this function for granted. We thank you so much. Let me also take this opportunity to welcome my colleagues, the commissioners generals from the East African region. You can only know the life of commissioners generals when you're one. It's very difficult to imagine. But as one of you, I know that we live on a roller coaster that never takes a break. You can easily lose count of time and days, and there's certainly no day when there's a break. I believe even when we take leaves and holidays, the heads continue to rotate around revenue. I've not taken leave myself for the last coming to 3 years, so I don't know what it feels to take leave. But I want to welcome you in a special way, colleagues, for creating the time to put a small break on that roller coaster and jump off. I know even here in your seats, you're still looking at the revenue numbers, but thank you for coming to Kampala, and I welcome you. I know your names have been mentioned, but allow me to introduce you officially to our guest of honor so that he gets to know which Commissioner General has come and the teams they've come with. So when I mention the name of the Commissioner General, I request him to stand, and also the team, the delegation that he has come leading, will stand up with him. So I take this opportunity to welcome my brother, Mr. Githi James Mburu, the Commissioner General of Kenya Revenue Authority. And the entire distinguished delegation of commissioners, you're very, very welcome, and all the technical team. You can please take your seat. In the same spirit and breath, it is my singular pleasure to welcome Mr. Jean Claudi Manirakiza, the Commissioner General of OBR. Our guest of honor, you're most welcome, Comrade Jean. OBR, I will not attempt to pronounce it. I've never been good at languages. But it is the equivalent of Revenue Authority in Burundi. They are the Revenue Administration Authority of Burundi. You're welcome, Commissioner General, and your team. Please take your seat. And in the same spirit, our chief guest, I want also to welcome and acknowledge the presence of my brother, Mr. Patrick Mugoya, the Commissioner General of the South Sudan National Revenue Authority, and the delegation. You are very welcome, Brother Patrick and the entire team. You are very, very welcome. Please take your seat. Our guest of honor, I would also like to welcome my brother, the Deputy Commissioner General of Rwanda Revenue Authority, Mr. Jean Louis Karina Ngondo. Karina Ngondo. Thank you so much for coming, and you're most welcome. Allow me now to introduce and welcome the head of the delegation from Tanzania Revenue Authority, Mr. Ephraim Nde. Thank you, our brother, for coming, and most welcome, our brothers, the high-powered delegation from Tanzania Revenue Authority. Please take your seat. And last, but certainly by no means least, in a very special way, I want to welcome my brother, Mr. Yusuf Juma Mwenda, the Commissioner General of Zanzibar Revenue Authority. Comrade Juma, you are very welcome. And for you, I know it is your first time to be in this fora. We congratulate you upon your elevation of the Revenue Board to the Revenue Authority, and we welcome you to Kampala. You're very welcome. Now, our chief guests, without further ado, I really wanted to thank and welcome our brothers from the revenue authorities across the region for the great collaboration and support that we have enjoyed from one another. The work of revenue collection is like no other, very complex, very demanding, and the only way we are able to innovate and keep ahead on the game of revenue collection is to keep a very close fellowship as revenue administrations. So we meet biannually as East African Commissioner Generals and our teams, and we also keep in close contact, learning and benchmarking from one another so that we are able to deliver on this critical mandate of mobilizing revenue for our national development. Now, our chief guests, allow me to introduce the great team, your own very team here in Uganda, because as much as we are the hosts, we are also here as participants in this conference, and we are here to learn and support our comrades from the region. So let me ask the team of commissioners that I lead at the Uganda Revenue Authority and all the technical staff present here also to stand up and be acknowledged. The URA team. Thank you very much. Please take your seats, and thank you for the organization of today's conference. So our chief guest, that is all with the introductions and the acknowledgement of members. As I was saying a while ago, I thank the Commissioner Generals and their teams for finding the time to come, but I also thank them for the great support that they've been able to extend to one another as members of the East African community. Uganda Revenue Authority is an ardent member of this forum, and we are honored today to host this conference. The major goal of forming the East African Revenue Authority's CG's Forum was to ensure that we attain harmonized, standardized, and integrated tax administration systems across the partner states. These meetings, therefore, provide a platform for exchange of ideas, good practices relating to tax administration and revenue collection in the region. Through the East African Revenue Authority's Technical Committee, as you'll be hearing later on in our presentations, studies have been made, researches have been conducted, analysis of technical issues that affect our tax administrations across board have been undertaken, and indeed, we've been able to come up with and implement very good recommendations that have enhanced revenue collection. URA has gained a lot of insights from the recommendations that have been discussed and implemented over time. And I can just mention a few, but things like taxation of the digital economy, alternative dispute resolution, lifestyle audits, joint operations in handling smuggling, performance management, revamped. I thought the URA team would have some applause about that. My brother James Mburu, our last visit to KRA was life-changing. And when we came back, we've been trying to implement the revamped performance management. And you can pick from the reactions. It is sweet and sour. But we thank you so much. These are things that we could never have dreamt of or imagined except by visiting one another, except by learning from one another. But they certainly add value. And we are happy that you're here to share more on some of these experiences. So the 50th East African Revenue Administration CG's Forum meeting today has the theme of leveraging technology and data for revenue mobilization. It is a timely theme given the immense potential of technology in enhancing domestic revenue mobilization. Tax agencies across the globe are increasingly relying on digital methods to mobilize revenue and to keep up with the ever-changing terrain in the economy. This allows them timely access to huge amounts of data that flows within the systems of business enterprises, institutions, and governments. And this data has great potential to help in the revenue collections in real time. So this will be the core theme and the focus for engagement in the next 2 days. Once again, I would like to welcome you to this 50th meeting of East African Revenue Administration Forum. I want to welcome members of our technical committees who have taken time to prepare the material that we'll be discussing throughout these 2 days together. And I wish every participant a very fruitful deliberation and certainly a great time to interact at a personal level. We lost about 2 years guest of honor because of the COVID lockdown when we could not meet physically, but again, we are able to meet virtually. So I welcome you to this physical meeting, and I wish that the next 2 days will be very engaging and we'll participate in the discussions that will help us tackle the practical challenges and obstacles that we face every day in the execution of our mandate. I wish you a successful dialogue for God and my country. And now, with these few remarks, it is my singular honor and pleasure to invite our guest of honor, our Secretary to the Treasury, Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Mr. Ramadan Gobi, to come and address this forum. You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, John. Distinguished Commissioners General from our sister nations in the EAC, the commissioners of all East African revenue authorities, representatives of the EAC Secretariat, representatives of ATAF, the East African Revenue Authorities Technical Committee members, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all, and you are very most welcome to Uganda, those who are coming in. You know, in other words, this country is called the Pearl of Africa, and I'm glad that John and his team brought you at this part of our beautiful country. Please enjoy the country. I don't know why they put you in a room. Perhaps we should have been at the beach down there discussing revenue. On behalf of government of Uganda and on my own behalf, I really welcome you to this 50th meeting of the East Africa Revenue Authorities Commissioner General here in Kampala. As you know, domestic revenue mobilization and regional cooperation hold the key to economic prosperity, and therefore this journey of collaboration among the revenue administrations in our region cannot be underestimated. There is great learning and sharing of potential coupled with the reduction in the turnaround of ideas owing to the vast experiences that we all have. I therefore urge all of us to promote this partnership and collaboration under your forum and actively work towards strengthening its influence on tax policy and tax administration issues in the region. We all acknowledge the fact that tax systems within our region are mainly based on self-assessment. The effectiveness and efficiency of this system depends on the ability and willingness of taxpayers to understand and comply with the legal obligations, as well as the ability of the administrators of these tax systems to interpret and enforce the laws. It is therefore incumbent upon our revenue administrations to develop innovative technologies, especially those approaches which can sustainably facilitate taxpayer compliance in a user-friendly, accessible, and simple manner. Our revenue administrations must of necessity engage in comprehensive research and studies to inform policy formulation. Quality research provides empirical evidence to guide reforms covering the determination of the most effective tax rates, devising simple tax regimes that enhance compliance and the expected size and responses to adjustments in the tax structure. It's therefore an area that I call upon our regional administrations to fully embrace. At a national and regional level, we do observe that modernization of taxation processes in the recent past has been accompanied by increase in total revenue. These innovative reforms have contributed to consistent growth in revenue collections over the past decade. However, despite increasingly bringing the region's tax systems in line with international standards, our region, as we all know, is yet to realize the out of sub-Saharan African average of 18% tax to GDP ratio as per our peers elsewhere. Therefore, in order to leverage digital solutions in response to COVID-19 and advance the region's digital transformation, there is a need to catalyze regional and global integration of the digital economy. Furthermore, one of the limitations in our region is the diversity in the tax procedures and laws across our different countries. This diversity not only creates complexity, but also creates avenues through which tax-paying community can exploit one jurisdiction against the other. While significant studies have been made on customs front, there is need for the revenue administrations to engage and spearhead the discussions leading to harmonization, especially on the domestic taxes front. Harmonization will give us advantage of promoting our region as a destination of choice for investment, hence improving our joint prosperity and also enhancing our tax revenue collections. I commend the efforts of the ESC and the IMF in spearheading the harmonization of our tax procedures as well as our excise duties in the region. I believe that the results of this work, if well implemented, will yield a simple and predictable system that will foster economic growth in our region. Allow me to emphasize that we must act now to mobilize domestic revenues. Why? Because this is the only way we are going to be able, as a region, to promote our development goals, overcome the challenges we are facing currently. As you know, the fiscal spaces in our region are narrowing and the debt levels have increased. The only way out, and it's part of our agenda as East Africa in fiscal consolidation, is to mobilize more revenue so that we can achieve economic independence, we can recover from the economic setbacks that we have faced recently, especially the post-pandemic period, and so on and so forth. I wish all of you fruitful deliberations that will certainly go a long way in strengthening the region cooperation and domestic revenue mobilization. Thank you very much for listening.
In Uganda, when your principals share wisdom, we say asante sana, and I will be guiding you in that for each of our principals that does the same. Asante sana. Asante tena. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to accounting for the revenues we collect in this country, and to make sure that they are appropriated as Parliament has dictated, the name to mention is Mr. Ramadan Gobi. In Uganda, we know him for the economics that works. So many can learn that because we are blessed with his leadership. With your permission, Commissioner General, Uganda Revenue Authority, we would want to have you invite your colleagues to be able to also grace this occasion before we actually go out for a break. So I would want to thank you very much. With your permission, Commissioner General, would like to have remarks that come from our leadership from across the region, and would like to invite our first remarks coming from the Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority, Mr. Githei James Mburu, to be able to share some words of wisdom to this honorable congregation. Just like our Commissioner General said, when we see Mr. Mburu, we think of performance management.
Our chief guest, Mr. Ramadan Govi, PSST, Minister of Finance. I'm not sure I know the full word. Our host and chairman, the Commissioner General from Rwanda Revenue Authority, my colleagues, Commissioners General from the other East African member countries, our colleagues whom we work with on a daily basis to do a very wonderful job for our countries. Good morning. Our distinguished guests, we are here today because we do a job that requires us to meet regularly. One, we come to learn from each other. We come to find out what is working well and where. We always say there is no need to reinvent the wheel. If it is working somewhere else, we pick it, we run with it. I was in December, I was in Rwanda Revenue Authority to pick a few issues or a few lessons on how they are managing their VAT, because they seem to be doing very well at a very high percentage of GDP. And so, as Kenya, I went there, discussed with the leadership of Rwanda Revenue Authority, and they were very gracious to us to show us what it is that they are doing, and they are now working with us to help us address our VAT challenge. I have heard you are also, Uganda Revenue Authority is also implementing the performance management framework, which we have been implementing in Kenya, and which we believe is working very well for us, and it should work very well for Uganda. I know the silence may not be. Yeah, I was telling someone from URA that the best is yet to come. It always comes when you first of all do the contract, you validate the performance, you take some people to the performance improvement plan, and those who pull through, you pat their back. Those who do not pull through, they graduate to another process we call performance disciplinary, and after that, you wish them well and tell them you wish them what you call you wish them success in their future endeavors. So in Kenya, it has worked very well, and I believe it should work in Uganda. So we come here to learn from one another. We do not wish to use a lot of time reinventing the wheel. If it is working in any of our sister countries, then it should work for all of us. And we should take it and run with it. We have no time to waste. Because in this job we do, every day matters. Every minute, every second matters. What our chief guest has said, fiscal consolidation, reducing reliance on debt, focusing more on revenue collection. So we are always under pressure to do, and therefore we have no time to waste. So we are here to learn. We will go through our performance. We will see who is doing better than the other. We ask ourselves, what is it that they are doing? We pick it and we use it to move forward. We also learn what is not working. And we encourage those who are doing things that are not working to drop them and graduate to those things that are working. So this is a very important gathering for all of us. And when we come here, we take our work very seriously. We are going to be very attentive to what is coming through, the things we had commissioned in the previous meeting to be done. We are going to evaluate them and make sure that they are working for us. The future of tax administration now is in collection of revenue at source, ensuring that you embed revenue collection to the daily activities of taxpayers. We are moving away from self-assessment to collecting the taxes as and when the transactions happen. So it is in automation. So we would like to know who is doing what in terms of collection at source, in terms of automating their processes, in terms of improving the way they do business. We are also looking at ensuring that we continue improving the efficiency of the revenue administration. The more efficient we become in collection of revenue, the more the revenue we collect, and the more we support our governments in fiscal consolidation. So as we gather here today, we will go through a lot of discussions. And at the end of the day, we will highlight, or we will agree, we will have a communique to communicate what it is that we have agreed moving forward, or what has come out of this meeting. So I'm glad to be here today, to be part of this conversation. I came with my entire team, as you saw. Every of my commissioners who have a direct contribution to revenue are here, because we want to see what is happening elsewhere, to exchange ideas, to learn, and by the end of the day, we are going to go back to Kenya a better team, and I'm sure we are going to leave everybody else better. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Asante sana. In the performance management, we are currently at the validation stage. Recently, we launched the bonded warehouse information management system. So one of my managers was presenting his validation for the activities he has done. So he presented the activity that was conducted to launch the bonded warehouse management system. That activity is under the Commissioner Customs. The Commissioner Customs was there, the Commissioner General URA was there as the guest of honor. It was a fantastic engagement. But on this occasion during validation, the Commissioner Customs was the chair of the board validating. So when this manager presented his activity, he was asked, where's the evidence? The manager says, but you were there. He says, yes, I was there, but I can't speak for you. Where is the evidence? Trust me, there was some bit of desk banging, and that is what performance management is up to. Ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, Commissioner General, URA, would like to invite the Commissioner General from the Burundi Revenue Services, Mr. Jean-Claude Manrizika, to grace us with some words of wisdom.
Good morning, CGs and my colleagues. I prepare my speech in French because I know Burundi is a French-speaker country. But this morning, I decided to do it in English. because all of us, we must increase our level in English and in Swahili, because we must be an East African full option. So I invite those who are English one to learn French and Kiswahili to be a full option in East African. For now, the RPSSD of Finance Minister, Commissioners General, Commissioner, Chairperson of the ERTC, Head of Delegation, ERT Technical Committee members, ladies and gentlemen, good morning once again. I'd like to take this opportunity to address the warm greeting from Burundi. It is a great pleasure for me to be here for the first physical attending in ERCG's meeting for me. Allow me to express thanks to Uganda Revenue Authority for hosting the 50th ERCG meeting in Kampala and the great hospitality exhibited upon our arrival. I hope and I believe that will be a meeting in additional occasion to exchange experiences, analyze together the common issues in order to ensure that we attend to the harmonized standardization and the integrated tax administration system among all the partner states. The goal behind that is to reach the sustainability of public finance management and therefore improve economic growth rate in the region. We regret to obey. We have great interest in this kind of meeting where we learn a lot of things from our eldest revenue authorities who have already accumulated a lot of experience in domestic tax, customs, tax investigations, and the temporary issues. This kind of meeting guides us to improve our own working system and therefore allows us to achieve more objectives assigned to our tax administration, especially in the improvement of tax revenue collection. To this effect, I wish fruitful deliberations during this 50th ARCG meeting and the AG OBR delegation member to take advantage of this sharing and experience within the ARC Revenue Authority, Commission General, Commissioner, Chairperson of ERTC, Head of Delegation, ERA Technical Committee member, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like also to express thanks to the organizer and the facilitator, and I encourage you to participate, to work hard, and go far during these 2 days of working so that the East Africa community and the whole Africa continent can successfully address the common issue and the leveraging of technology to mitigate the challenges of the taxes of the digital economy. Thank you very much for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manira Kiza. Asante sana. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite the Commissioner General, South Sudan National Revenue Authority, Mr. Patrick Mugoya, to grace us. We had a debate yesterday whether he was a Ugandan or not a Ugandan, and I feared to ask, but probably we'll get to know. You're very welcome, Mr. Mugoya.
Thanks, Ibrahim. Guest of honor, our chief host, Mr. Musinguzi, colleagues, commissioners general, and dear delegates, good morning. For the avoidance of doubt, Ibrahim I am from South Sudan, not Uganda. Guest of honor, I will try to be brief as possible, no matter how long it takes. I and my delegation from the National Revenue Authority of the Republic of South Sudan do really appreciate the Commissioner General of URA, our friend, Mr. Musinguzi, and his able team for the care and concern for our well-being and comfort right from the moment we arrived at the airport until now. I bring with me warm greetings and well wishes from the management and staff of the NRA to URA in particular, but also to all colleagues in the fraternity of the revenue authorities in our region. As the youngest member of this fraternity, the National Revenue Authority, which has now entered its final phase of establishment, with the approval of its first 5-year strategic plan, as well as its human resource policy, stand to immensely benefit from the exchange of experiences that has been talked about here in the many critical revenue administration functions that are lined up for discussions and deliberations today and tomorrow. And we hope that this will enhance our capacity as the youngest member of the fraternity to translate our vision into reality. This is why I have come with a big delegation by our standards, as you have seen. My delegation includes 4 full commissioners. We have the Commissioner Domestic Taxes, Commissioner Customs, Commissioner Internal Affairs, Commissioner Internal Audit, and Deputy Commissioner Research and Planning, and others. So by our standards, this is a big delegation. And this is due to the importance that we attach to this gathering. I want to register our appreciation for the support that NRA has all along been enjoying through this fraternity, and also through other bilateral arrangements in relation to such areas as customs automation and exchange of information, for example, with URA and KRA, and a range of capacity development engagements, for instance, with URA, RRA, and TRA, just to mention a few. These collaborations have been a source of inspiration for us and have indeed played a critical role in enabling the National Revenue Authority of the Republic of South Sudan to not only develop its first 5-year strategic plan and its human resource policy, but also to improve domestic revenue mobilization to the extent of surpassing its revenue collection target for the first half of this current fiscal year. For us, looking at the presentations that will be the subject of our discussions at this meeting, this session is a continuation of yet another mutually beneficial engagement with colleagues And for this reason, we look forward to an exceedingly rewarding interaction in these 2 days. I wish to conclude my brief remarks by once again thanking the URA for hosting this 50th Earacg's session and the associated very warm welcome that has made us feel as comfortable as one can be away from one's usual board. Thank you very much.
Asante sana. With your permission, PSST, would like to invite the Deputy Commissioner General, Rwanda Revenue Authority, Mr. Jean-Louis Kalindongo. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jean-Louis.
Kaliningondo. Thank you very much. The guest of honor, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance and secretary to the Treasury, the chairperson, Commissioner General Mr. Msinguzi, colleagues, commissioners general here present, our colleagues, commissioners, assistant commissioners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to first say, I'm Jambo. Habari gani? For those who do not understand Swahili, it's simply a greeting. Good morning. I would like to first extend the greetings and sincere apologies of our Commissioner General of Rwanda Revenue Authority, Mr. Pascal Bizimana Ruganinhwari, who was not able to attend in person this important meeting of the EAC Commissioner Generals due to other pressing engagements. My names, as you've heard, though laboriously pronounced, are Jean-Louis Kaliningondo, and I serve as Deputy Commissioner General at Rwanda Revenue Authority, standing here in the name of the Commissioner General himself. I wish to express our gratitude to URA for hosting this meeting and for the warm welcome that was accorded to us since our arrival. We thank you, URA team, for your efforts and dedication to make this 50th ERA Commissioner General's meeting a pleasant and successful event. I'm accompanied by a small team, but big. When I look at our standard as an administration, I have with me the Commissioner for Internal Audit and Integrity, Mrs. Rosine Wamaria, the Assistant Commissioner for Taxpayer Audit, Mr. Ronald Niwenshuti, the Assistant Commissioner for Research and Planning, Mr. Mukama Dennis, and the Supervisor for Private Bonded Warehouses in our Customs Department, Mr. Mushaija Fauza. Allow me to ask them again to stand for 1 second, so they can be seen. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, as I'm sure it will be presented by the technical committee team, RRA was able to achieve and surpass the target of the first semester of this current fiscal year with a performance of 101%. That's in excess of 1%. But like other revenue authority, we are operating and we are collecting taxes in unprecedented times marked by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the increasing commodity prices and high fuel costs caused by the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, these circumstances, as you know, call for revenue authorities to increase on their efficiency and reduce the cost of doing business. Digital transformation, that is information technology, and data analytics rank among the most important areas where we as RRA are investing to increase on the efficiency of collecting
taxes. We look forward to share our experience with you and to learn from you, from each of the sister administrations here present in this forum. In particular, I can say that in person, my attention has been roused by the wonderful and successful collaboration between URA and KRA in the adoption of a performance management system, which has been spoken of many times already this morning. And I would like to investigate a little bit more and see to what extent Rwanda would adopt such a system for its own good. So our continued cooperation and collaboration as sister revenue authorities in this region is of utmost importance. Africa has been the sleeping giant in so many areas now, and we do not have the luxury of working in silos anymore. As CG Gidimburu said, rightly, time is of essence. Every minute, every second counts. Let's learn, let's share. Let's make sure that we push each other towards higher levels, better performances as revenue authorities as we serve our respective peoples. I thank you for your attention. Asante sana.
Asante sana. Thank you. Our guest of honor, with your permission, our next speaker from the Tanzania Revenue Authority and head of delegation has requested to be able to present from his seat, if you so wish, Mr. Ephraim Ndei.
Thank you very much, Assistant Commissioner. Guest of honor, PSST, Commissioner General, URA, our host, Commissioner Generals, Commissioners, Directors, Head of Delegations of Earacg, and other technical members in the team of Earacg. First of all, I would like also to acknowledge that the Commissioner General from Tanzania Revenue Authority, Mr. Alfayo Kidata, was not able to attend this very important meeting. Actually, he was very well prepared to attend the events, but unfortunately, due to some circumstances happened a few days and intervened his schedule, so he was not managed to join us in this event. So I apologize for that. But he is with us because he knows that we're here and he is following what is going on here in this session. So we thank you very much, URA, for hosting this event, and also for a very warm reception that TRA delegation has received from yesterday when we arrived at Uganda. Till now, actually, we are enjoying and we are happy. We are enjoying the whole of Africa. Thank you very much for your warm reception. Commissioner Generals, guest of honor, this meeting is very important for us, especially because we have passed for the two recently passed years we have passed through struggle in March due to some big two events that have happened on the pandemic, COVID, and Ukraine and Russia war. So tax administration was passing through a difficult time to ensure that the government can also proceed with their activities, but depending on these tax administration what they are doing. So it was a difficult time that you have passed, but currently, as I heard from my colleague here, it seems that we tax administrations, we are moving well in terms of revenue collections that our governments depending much on them. So this meeting is very important to us because of those difficulties we have passed through, to discuss, to share experience, to share difficulties, to share challenges that we have faced during this time, so that we get a good way on how we can move to ensure that we provide to our governments what they expect from us tax administration or revenue authorities. By saying so, I thank you, Earacg, for hosting this meeting again, and we expect much from this meeting to improve our tax administration and later revenue mobilization. So together with me, I would also like to introduce my colleagues from Tanzania Revenue Authority so that they can stand. Again, my colleague from Tanzania Revenue Authority. Yeah. So we have commissioner for tax investigation, director for IT. We have assistant commissioner from customs. We have director for internal affairs department. We have director for legal. We have other colleagues from the East Africa Revenue Authority Technical Committee who also joined us in this event. Thank you very much.
Our guest of honor, to crown this session of the morning, will invite the Commissioner General of the Zanzibar Revenue Authority, Mr. Yusuf Juma Mwenda. In Uganda, usually we save best for last. Mr. Juma.
Dear Chief Guests, PSST, our host chairman, the CG of URA, Mr. Musinguzi. I don't know whether I have pronounced properly. CGs present in this meeting, dear delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to say habari ya asubuhi. First, I would like to thank you, the hosts, for the successful organizing the 50th this forum here at Uganda, the Pearl of Africa. Together with my colleague, we appreciate for the inviting hospitality extended to us. I know this is the culture of East African countries, so we thank you very much for that hospitality. As I've been introduced, my name is Yusuf Juma Mwenda. I'm privileged to be the newly first appointed Commissioner General of Zanzibar Revenue Authority. Established from the former Zanzibar Revenue Board. I heard here the speaker still was introducing as Zanzibar Revenue Board. I know it will take time, but allow me now to introduce for the first time in this forum that instead of Zanzibar Revenue Board, now we have the Zanzibar Revenue Authorities. This is a result of transformation that has been made by the revolutionary government of Zanzibar to enhance what we are doing here today. The government wants to mobilize revenue to the potential that we have, and the government wants to finance its budget to 100%, to increase efficiency, to improve simplicity, as has been said. The government of Zanzibar established the Zanzibar Revenue Board, Zanzibar Revenue Authority. So we are in transition. We are now finalizing the logo and others. So the Secretariat will receive everything, the documents and others, upon completion of the transition period. I know and I underscore the importance and relevance of cooperation among the member states in domestic mobilization of resources to our respective countries. We are looking forward as ZRA in sharing experience to ensure that we attain the objective of having this forum. I want to affirm before you hear that the new ZRA will be an active member, participants in these important meetings to tap and share the full benefits that is expected from this meeting. Zanzibar is a tourist economic destination. Experience the importance of using technology in revenue mobilization. We were hit hard by the pandemic, COVID, because 40% of our economy depends on the revenue chain of the tourism. With the COVID, we were highly affected, and we are now recovering, and the use of technology will help us to ensure that we fully recover the required taxes. Our relevance as authorities is conditional to leveraging technology in tax administration. I may confess that in my leadership as head of Zanzibar Revenue Authorities, before Zanzibar Revenue Board, and with the emphasis of using technology, our performance has improved tremendously. And I can bet before you that if we emphasize on the use of technology, and instead of being satisfied with the self-assessment system and moving toward what Mr. Mbulu has said, we collect the revenue from the source, I'm sure we are going to fully finance our budgets for the respective countries. So in these meetings, we are looking forward then, as ZRA, to have a common understanding and approach in revenue mobilization, to share experiences in common tax administration, in issues similar to us, and to have a fruitful discussion on how our revenue administration will leverage technology and optimize tax revenue collection. I again confess that in my presence at ZRA has witnessed the use of technology in leveraging, in mobilizing revenue resources. I once again bait with emphasis of technology to all of us. We are going to finance our budget from our own mobilized resources. I thank you again, our host, for the hospitality, and I hereby welcome you to Zanzibar, the Spice Islands. Asanteni sana na washukuru sana.
Asante sana. That was wonderful. Our guest of honor, following the remarks that we have received, we have basically two items. One is to adopt the agenda for this meeting and also get into a presentation on the performance of the East African Revenue Authorities. So if somebody could flash the agenda and we have it adopted, with your permission. So with your permission, guest of honor, would like to be able to adopt that agenda that will be the basis of discussion for today and tomorrow.
Colleagues, let's have someone to support the adoption of agenda, or if there is anything that we would like us to include, to do so now. But from now and until tomorrow when we close, we'd like to cover those agenda items. We've already handled the opening remarks from all the CGs of the East African region. Now next on the agenda would be presentation of the statement of performance, and any comments and reactions after that. Then would have the report, which includes all the subcommittees on the assignments that they were given, what has been completed and what is ongoing. Next is a strategy on taxation of the telecom companies, and we'll listen to the TRA experience as well as the other members who have made some advancement in this area. We'll go for the electronic bidding machines presentation. Again, the experience here will be led by Rwanda Revenue Authority, but other nations will share the experiences. Then we'll have a presentation from the Integrity Forum, a presentation from the ERCTI, made by the URA, then closing remarks and confirmation of minutes and close of the forum. So friends, you're free to make any additions. It's going to be a packed. Of course, we have jumped to all the small other areas. These are the substantive agenda items, but in between we'll have interactions, breaks, dinners, and so on. Is there something that you'd like to add, or we can adopt the agenda as proposed?
Chair, I wish to propose adoption of the agenda as is. Thank you.
Thank you, CG James. Seconded? Excellent. Zanzibar Revenue Authority has seconded this. So the agenda is adopted as is. Thank you very much.
Asante sana. Thank you, Commissioner General, for that leadership. Allow me to introduce you to guests, distinguished guests that were not here at the time we did our introductions. Mr. Jonathan Sesanga from the East African Community has just joined us. You may want to stand so that our distinguished guests see you. We have Madame Patience Rubagumya, the Commissioner Legal Services and Border Affairs at the Uganda Revenue Authority. Thank you very much. At this juncture, with your permission, CG, would like to invite a presentation on the statement of performance of the East African Revenue Authorities. Could we have the presentation now, please?
Commissioners General, guest of honor, colleagues in the tax administration, invited ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to present to you the statement of performance from the regional, from the revenue authorities within the region. I am called Dennis Mukama, the Assistant Commissioner for Research, Planning, and Statistics in the Rwanda Revenue Authority. I'm just trying to look for the best angle so that I can follow this. We have a challenge is if I go far, I'll not be able to move the slide. So I have to operate within a limited space. So I am, okay, so sorry for this inconvenience in case I keep turning back. So yeah, thank you so much. So in this statement of performance, CGs, this is going to indicate how we performed as tax administrations within the region, indicating our performance in we give a bit of a highlight of how we performed in the previous year, because we did not get a report on how we performed in the previous fiscal year. And then we will also talk about the performance of our first quarter, the first semester of this particular fiscal year. And then we'll look at some of the indicators that we keep tracking for our comparative purposes. And then we'll also try to look at the reasons for performance of the first half of this fiscal year and any challenges that we've experienced within the fiscal year. If we are to start with, okay. Like I said, this is just an indication of how we performed in our previous fiscal year, where we, as revenue authorities, we only, for the appreciation of the CGs and the guest of honor, we only indicate how each revenue authority performed and the growth levels within the 2021-2022 fiscal year, within that fiscal year. And as you can see, mainly OBR and KRA, RRA exceeded their targets, whereas TRA, URA, and ZR, sorry, now it's the ZRA, we stand corrected and note the change. Those performed below target. However, the growth rates, as indicated by the bar, are very impressive, meaning that they were coming from a challenge of the COVID-19 and the recovery process, where the revenues were a bit low, but the growth rates, you can see, much as they didn't meet the targets, the growth rates were still high. We again show the performance again within this fiscal year, broken down by departments, where we see domestic taxes on the first right hand, the left batch of the graph, and then the right we show international tax. Again, the same revenue authorities, the same pattern is maintained within performance by trend, where the same revenue authorities that met the targets is indicated also in their breakdown of the performance. Now, usually CGs, we would go in deep to understand or to share with you why what are some of the indicators that we track up to this very year. And this again came out from the request of the previous CG's meeting, where we said, in terms of comparing ourselves, can we at least also show some of the indicators that we track, that we can give us a detailed analysis of the performance of our tax administrations. And we've been doing this through the regional comparative reports. However, it was also requested that we expand the indicators therein that are embedded in that in the comparative analysis up to 2021-22. And if you look in your booklets or the working documents, you will have this little summary of the key indicators that shows you the indicators that we track at the regional level within our regional comparative, which speaks a lot of the, for comparative purposes and also maintaining our performance, how we keep track of some of the indicators. We would, of course, we will welcome any guidance on the kind of indicators that we may want to expand further, reduce, or improve going forward. However, this was just to let you, for your appreciation that we track this as up to the final year for which we have completed business of operations. Now, in this, with that, having noted that, then this performance also looks at the performance within the first half of this fiscal year. And here we try to do it in two ways. We try to look at some of the overlying macro indicators that may have had an impact on the outcome of the first semester. And one of these indicators we are looking at is the inflation. Because as the inflation takes a hit, it influences how much nominal revenue we collect. So what you see on the graph is, again, these are color-coded. We maintain the colors for each revenue authority. Burundi with the gray, and as you can see. So what we noticed that, yes, there's unprecedentedly high inflation rates, but when it comes to Burundi and Rwanda, they were exceptional, especially between the months of, between the second quarter of this, I mean, between the first, the second quarter, yes, of this fiscal year. We also try to track the exchange rate because, as we know, it also has a direct impact on the revenue collections. And we're trying to see if this has been reflected in the performance of our tax administration. So what do we see in terms of performance generally? Again, we see that OBR did not meet their targets this first semester. That is July to December. KRA also did not meet their targets. However, RRA did meet their targets. And I think it's only tax administration that really met their targets in the first semester. But the others slightly fell short. However, we see very strong growth, especially in ZRA, given where they're coming from and the effects of COVID and how they recovered, despite them not meeting their performance targets. Again, we try to do the same in terms of performance by domestic and international tax. We see the same, but when you look at the domestic, we see that RA and URA met their targets or even exceeded, whereas the others fell short. So, when we go to the, again, performance that we're trying to track is, despite the performance that we see in general, and now that we want to go into a bit of a detailed analysis, what are the key tax heads that we are monitoring, and how did they perform along the years? I mean, along the within the countries, and you can see this as indicated there by the different revenue authorities: pay as you earn, VAT. Corporate income tax, VAT domestic and VAT customs, the same with excise, domestic and excise customs. Yes. Now, for us to understand exactly what are some of the reasons, we also try to track our reliability or dependency on which tax heads as tax administrations. So as you can see from this graph, we are considering the key tax types: payee, PIT, CIT, VAT, and excise. And here what we see, or what is coming out, or what's really protruding is most of our tax administrations rely heavily on VAT, which is in yellow, as you can see in the legend. But then when we see, we look at pay as you earn and PIT, which would be the personal income taxes. When we break those down further, we see that most of us, in terms of personal income taxes, there's a high dependence on pay as you earn or payroll taxes, as opposed to the personal income tax from individual business operators. So this is just to give us an appreciation of where we lie or where we depend most as tax administrations. And you can still look at it different ways when you break it down into direct and indirect taxes. It gives you a feel of who depends on what most. So some of the reasons, therefore, in terms of performance, having seen that, we note that at least in OBR, fuel shortage, and again, some of these are cross-cutting, but you find that fuel shortage was a big hindrance in their performance as a country in general, but also as a tax administration due to the ongoing war. And then they had planned, I think, within this fiscal year to automate as many services as possible, which did not happen. So the manual existence of operations hindered their performance in vis-a-vis their targets. And again, we see that there's fraud and fictitious misuse of VAT and fictitious claims by companies had a big impact on their performance. And again, some of these are cross-cutting. It's just that the way they've been expressed may be a bit different. KRA, which saw a bit of a slow growth in the public sector, especially in the APE, due to the slow exchequer disbursement that goes to counties and many ministries, departments, and agencies. Again, fuel prices made it a bit of a challenge in terms of revenue collections, and this had a hinge on the exchange rate that we had highlighted. Decline in the value of motor vehicles, of course, this had an effect on customs performance, and particularly some of the items that were affected are motorcycles and, of course, products used in the iron sheet and steel, among others. And then they also saw a drop in excisable products, beers, bottled water, and spirits mainly. And then RA, of course, among the things that boosted the payee performance was the change in the policy in terms of the treatment of salaries of teachers, whose salaries went up, and we saw a direct increase of almost 12 billion in revenue. And also, the GDP grew a lot faster than was anticipated. It was expected to grow around 6.5, but the actual outturn was more than 10%. Again, one thing that we saw in terms of recovery of the economy, government boosted expenditures and payments through withholding income to try and boost, economic recovery by paying out faster, which also directly implicated the tax. And we saw an increase in the value of inputs. This also speaks partly to the imported inflation, where the value of the goods was faster than the actual weight of goods coming in. TRA, again, the high fuel costs. So the ongoing war between Russia, Ukraine, and all this is really impacting us in terms of the transport and the fuel costs. They also increased workers' salary, which boosted their payee, and they implemented, of course, VAT electronic filing system that enabled, effective verifications. They saw a decrease in the transactions that tracked withholding tax, especially dividends, which also speaks to how they performed in terms of income tax. URA, there was an increase in the demand for government services, and they also enforced non-tax revenues. When we also see that, again, fuel volatility comes again, but then also the inflation. Inflation, which was unanticipated or which was higher than usual, means that at a certain point it starts having detrimental effects on your revenue collections as people start spending more on the basics as opposed to the taxable, the VAT-able or taxable commodities like drinks, alcoholic beverages, and focusing more on the edibles. So you lose that aspect of excise and VAT. ZRB, there's a lot of monitoring and face vetting of submitted returns. They had timely completion of planned audit cases, and the enforcement of EFDs especially in the hotels. And this is particularly important because their hotels took a hit during the COVID-19, where they lost their economy that depends a lot on tourism, was affected. So they had to put a lot of effort as the recovery started to pick up. If we can go to the next. Now here we're trying to look at, within this period that we are looking at, the first semester, what are some of the admin measures that have been implemented for us to appreciate and maybe even benchmark, and still also could come to explain some of the performances. Now in OBR, they continue to pursue revenue. They had challenges of payments by the government institutions, so there was a lot of effort that was put in that to try and make sure that they recover these revenues. But also, they changed a bit in the strategy of auditing, focusing mainly on auditing submitted returns to focus more on issue audits that can at least give them quick wins or quick returns. When you look at KRA, there are almost 431 cases, ADR cases that were resolved and yielded almost $28.2 million US dollars. They strengthened, of course, the audit functions as well, from which they earned over 64 million USDs. And they expanded the tax base in terms of the tax register, and whose members, the new entrants, added another 44 million US dollars. In terms of RA, there is enforced usage of electronic billing machines or electronic invoicing system. This boosted the performance of VAT we saw, particularly with our members on the ground that go on, enforcing that there is proper usage of the system and the invoicing, proper amounts are recorded. One interesting thing that probably we could share with you in terms of the RRA is the introduction of controls for the income tax, where we saw a huge addition to the revenues to the tune of 29 million USD. Is that at least within the system, for your expenditure to be accepted for income taxes, it has to be backed by an electronic billing machine invoice, and the system is able to cross-check this and stop any bogus claims which are not backed up by the invoicing system. And then, of course, the joint inspections between domestic tax and the investigations helped a lot in terms of, especially for local excise, in terms of making sure that the stamps are properly managed, which also had a direct effect on the performance of excise. TRA, I'm not going into all the details, but as you can see, they had 56 offenses that were issued, 17 of which were compounded, yielded almost close to 0.1 million USDs, and another 13, almost 0.4 million came in that was collected. They had also a lot of staff building engagements, and audits continue to be part of the collection function, which added another 172 million USDs. URA, they expanded through the tax registry. They grew their registry by 17. And then, of course, the enforcement interventions yielded another 15 million USDs. And 80 cases were investigated. That also led a recovery of almost 26 million. ZRB, they opened 2 new regional offices within the urban, and then they are among their regions, new regional offices to offer better services to their taxpayers, and as well as also opening new customer centers within the city center itself. Then they embarked a lot on registration of professionals. Now, some of the policies, again, that were implemented within the period of review, I'll not go into the details, but at least there's a lot of issues, either as a result of the pandemic that were coming through, or as a result of fostering some sectors. Some targeted policies were implemented. Among them, you see focusing on the fertilizers, for which the VAT was zero-rated in KRA. And of course, the imposition of excise duty on importation of cellular phones at 10%, and you see how much it brought in. When it comes to OBR, they increased the placed an ad valorem tax of 1.5% of the customs for all imports to add onto the customs collections or their total collections, and also a non-fiscal tax of 5% on the sale of houses to boost their domestic revenue collections. Of course, in terms of RA, due to help the sector to grow, construction sector to grow and recover from the pandemic period, there is one exemption of VAT that was imposed on the manufacture under the Manufacture and Build to Recover program, targeting low-cost housing, so that VAT was exempted, and also in terms of ensuring that the effects of the high fuel prices that we spoke to earlier do not trickle down to the general masses. There was an exemption of the excise duty of that amount for public transport, so that people do not feel so much the effects of the high fuel prices. And again, also those even who have their cars as well, the rates of the excise on fuel levy were lowered slightly to accommodate these unfortunate eventualities. URA as well, some of the things that for them, they didn't have so many, any particular focus in terms of policy measures. However, there was a lot of emphasis on admin measures to, cover up the gap and the target that they had for the fiscal year. TRA, they introduced a VAT on digital services. They have VAT exemptions on standing trees, that's to regulate the forestry, and removed the VAT exemptions on supply of air chartered services. So as we finalize or we move towards the end of the presentation, CGs, we also look at some of the accomplishments within the revenue authorities, again, for us to take note and appreciate, and where possible, learn from each other. We start with the area where they approved a new structure at all levels, and as we speak today, implementation is underway. There's also a signing of, there was a signing of MOU between RRA and ZRB, ZRA. This is Zambia Revenue Authority and not the Zanzibar Revenue Authority. So this is between RRA and Zanzibar. So again, this is mainly to strengthen the cooperation and looking at how we can help each other based on the data assessment. And then there's also, I think the CG KRA also alluded to this, between the cooperation between RA and KRA, we are beginning to bear witness fruit benefits of this arrangement. KRA, among the accomplishments, there was a scaling up and expansion of the scope of the M services and the staff mobile app, as well as rolling out of the tax invoice management system. ZRB, they put a lot of effort in the automation and integration of domestic revenue management systems, whereas URA added 688 new staff to their workforce, bringing the total number to 3,280. I think they've also spoken a lot to much of what they borrowed from KRA in terms of staff management, so they've implemented the new performance management system. And they've also worked with partners in terms of research and to strengthen the usage of data through research. They've implemented a bonded warehouse information management system. OBR implemented a module for monitoring the use of foreign currencies or foreign currencies within the tax administration, but also they started piloting the electronic billing management system. And TRA, there was a lot movement towards the digitalization of the tax administration, where they they were developing the digital tax systems, as well as upgrading the e-filing and taxpayer registration system to be a web-based function. They also employed new staff. There are 1,000 of them. So there's a lot of drive to fill the gaps. If we can move. So some of the challenges that we witnessed, CGs. Again, these challenges could be cross-cutting, but we try to maintain them to their respective revenue authorities. KRA, as you can see, a number of things to do with smuggling and illicit trade. Of course, compliance issues, and hence the reason they're trying to, benchmark from where what Rwanda is doing in terms of managing VAT, and resource constraints. The resources that are given to the tax administration, given the mandate, there's that intricate balance continues to be a challenge, not only to KRA, but to a number of tax administrations as well. In terms of TRA, the delays that are caused by the appeal system, a lot of revenues held within those cases, and our hands seem to be tied when these are delayed. Smuggling and illegal dumping or localization of transit goods, as well as the domestic system trying to seemingly to be standing alone from the other system. So there's need to integrate, and of course the existence of a cash economy continues to be a challenge in tracking who's supposed to pay what. OBR as well, VAT fraud, again, this is cross-cutting, and the manual domestic systems, as they had reported earlier, they had intended to do a lot of automation, but this did not come to fruition. URA, there's again, smuggling continues to be rampant, given as evidenced by seized goods, as well as some budget constraints, as also highlighted by KRA. RA, of course, there's improper, even much as there's a lot of effort in how to administer VAT, but there's still some abuse in the usage of the invoicing system. And of course, the high inflation, this is on a macro level, that affects the amount of money that we collect due to people changing their consumption patterns, for instance. And then ZRB, the low levels of compliance in hospitality industry, which is very key to the revenues that they collect, more so that they depend a lot on VAT and as a big source of income. So, and finally, untimely payments. So, some as TC, of course, there's some suggestions that were raised, CGs, in terms of how can we try to overcome some of these, especially those that are cross-cutting. For instance, smuggling. There's harmonization of the tax rates due to some elements coming from the fact that the different rates applying within the different countries, and something that's being pushed through by the ESC. Use of drones, as we will be presented later on, and enhanced border patrols. In terms of compliance gaps, some of the things that have been highlighted, misuse of all this, there's a suggestion towards use of technology, for example, the electronic filing invoicing systems, integration of a 360 system that gives an overview of all the taxpayers, and that also requires a lot of integration. And where possible, we should push as much as possible the pre-population of returns. And of course, again, relying highly and as also usually guided by the TADAT, how do we expand our use of third-party information? So with that, I want to thank you and submit. Murakoze cyane.
I would like to think that that was a classic. Kindly, let's put our hands together again for Dennis Mukama and the research subcommittee that were able to put this together. I'd like to invite the host Commissioner General to probably preside over some comments and responses from the delegates.
Thank you very much, the Secretariat of the Technical Committee, for putting together this very informative overview on the performance of the tax administrations in the region. May I now invite any comments, reactions, points of clarifications before we move to the next agenda item. Just feel free to raise your hand and you can speak from where you are on what you'd like to say about this presentation. Are we in total agreement with what has been presented? Yes, Comrade Patrick, the CG South Sudan National Revenue Authority.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to thank the presenter and the team for compilation of this report, whose summary we have seen. I want to make two requests. I would like us to share the full report, not in summary form, if it is available. And I want to emphasize what you, Chair, has emphasized, and even CG, KRA, DCG, RRA, that actually the time for reinventing the wheel is not there, is no longer there. We don't have time. We can learn from these experiences very, very fast and pick up because we can see here areas where we performed, areas where we do not perform for each revenue authority, and the reasons and challenges and lessons. However, I noticed that South Sudan is missing, and I don't know the reason for that. And this takes me to my second request, that my team, if allowed, should engage with the Secretariat to rectify this. I don't know how that can be done, but I hope it is possible, it is feasible, so that in our next meeting, NRA should not be missing. So, Chair, for me, this has been a very, very informative presentation because I can see South Sudan is facing some of the challenges that are being faced by other revenue authorities, and I see the potential to duplicate the successes of our sister revenue authorities in many, many respects, especially for us, a young country. We have a huge, huge room to leapfrog by just duplicating what is being done in the other revenue authorities. And therefore, I really request that this report is shared in full. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CG Patrick, for those comments. I request that the Secretariat takes note, and after a number of comments, you can give some of the responses, like what CG Patrick has raised. We need to quickly have the NRA team on board and to have their statistics shared, just like you've done for the other jurisdictions. Can we have another round of comments or questions, and then we can have responses at the end? I think I can make, okay, yes, Comrade Ephraim.
Thank you, CG. Mine is not big. When I'm looking to revenue by economic sectors, found that in the agriculture sector, the contribution is very small compared to other economic activities. And it is almost all all over the region. The contribution is too small, so maybe I could wish maybe to advise if we can do a thorough study to see, because most of the EAC countries engage in agriculture activity, and we normally know that agriculture activities contribute much into GDP. So we could find a way now to look on how that contribution to GDP can also seen in revenue collection, to see what are the challenges in these economic activities. Despite that, there is preference in this sector by the government to make sure that the sector is growing, but in terms of revenue collection, you see that the sector is contributing little. So maybe I could advise if we can look more on this economic activity to see on how we can improve revenue collections. Thank you.
Very good point, Ephraim. Looking at the area where we all have great potential and great numbers of our citizens participating in those areas, but yet their tax contribution is low, like agriculture. I think that's an area where we should have a specific focus and research around that, maybe for our next forum. But again, let's capture that. Any other comments? I'd like to make one or two observations from the Ugandan perspective, but also generally the performance of certain tax heads. One of the slides was showing the performance of personal income tax, very dismal across the region, and yet for the aspiration that we have to increase our tax here, that one, to increase our tax to GDP ratio, that's a tax head that we cannot ignore. Individuals that earn the most in our economies should have a bigger contribution. But as you can see, the highest performance from Earacg is at 2.1%, and we applaud them for that. Others are 0 point something. I think what we could do also to understand the potential of each tax head is to have like the average for the OECD countries, to see what they harvest from each tax head, so that we know what we are growing towards as a benchmark. Because for us to be able to increase our tax to GDP ratio as the continent, we need to have a benchmark where we are aiming to get towards. But personal income tax is certainly one of those areas where there is great potential that is still untapped, and would like to listen more to RRA, the Rwanda Revenue Authority, on how they are able to get the 2%, and how we can learn from them also to improve from our very dismal collections in that area. And I think the same benchmark could apply for all the other tax heads. What would be the average for Africa today, and what is the average for the developed nations as we work towards that? But also I noticed that a number of countries in the region had some changes in the tax rates, which must have contributed towards the improved collections. And when it came to Uganda, the Ugandan perspective is that we left it, we did not increase any tax rates. And this was a decision of government mainly to mitigate the impacts of the pandemics, the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy. So the rates were not changed. However, it was also a way of challenging the tax administration to improve on the tax administration efficiencies. So the growth that was registered was mainly from administrative measures taken to improve collections. And as you can see, the growth of 14% coming from administrative interventions was also significant. But also the second reason for the Ugandan context is that the taxpayers are also always craving for certainty in the tax laws and rates. So I wanted us to share more with those who are changing how we balance between that predictability that the business community wants from us to keep it, to have tax rates that say last for like 3 or 5 years without changing, vis-a-vis, responding to the need to improve revenue performances and touching where you think there is potential to collect a little more. I think those are the two general comments from myself, and I would like to ask the colleagues to respond to some of these issues. CG Zanzibar Revenue Authority, you are welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I first commend those who have prepared that report. It's a good overview, and I think once we get the full report, we will learn a lot and implement some of the success stories from other revenue authorities. Mine is one, on the tax policy. You have seen TRA, but even ZRA, we have introduced taxation on digital services, digital service tax. But, this is a new phenomenon, and we have our colleague in Kenya who have started before us. I know Uganda, you went to learn in Kenya. We don't think we need to go to learn in Kenya. They're here, then we can share that experience. We need to learn on how we register them. These are digital platform, digital economy in the digital platform. They are locally not in our jurisdiction. I would appreciate if we learn how do we register them easily in a simplified way. How do they file their returns? How are we going to enforce compliance in case of under declaration? And all other issues pertaining to the tax administration regarding that area. So, Chairman, my request is we don't have them in the agenda, but if you could slot time to them to showcase their performance for those who are now starting to learn. Of course, they might have done some mistakes when they are initiating it. Where should we avoid and where should we emphasize in order to achieve the maximum benefits from that area? Thank you, CG.
Thank you very much, Mr. Juma, for those very important comments. And I think in line with what colleague James said earlier, the time is now. We must try and do what we can today rather than wait tomorrow. So whereas we will have time to put some of these substantive areas of discussion like digital tax on the program, we've been discussing it in the other forums like ATAF and others. Now that we have the opportunity of having KRA here, we'll ask our brother James and his team if they can slot in something for us to discuss, because they've taken a bold move in this direction, and as the whole continent, we are looking up to them to advise us on how to deal with the giants of this world. I see from our program, we have, first of all, if we save time in these sessions, we could do it today, but if we don't, I see tomorrow afternoon as if it's a bit more open, and I don't know if we'll have some of the guests returning tomorrow. Otherwise, we could put some of those things so that we give the teams time to prepare, but we also put them on the agenda deliberately, especially the digital service tax, to share some ideas. You can give guidance members as you come in to comment, but that's well noted and it's important for us all. Do we have any other comments? Even from the teams, the technical staff, and others, please feel free to comment. We'll be closing this session shortly and we'll go for the tea break. But if you want to comment on this. Yes, Brother Joe, you're welcome.
It's a very small comment in response to the question you had asked in relation to the relatively better performance of Rwanda when it comes to the personal income tax. While I do not have an exhaustive, well-researched answer to that, allow me to say that I believe that one big reason for that to happen was the existence of a system that allows for the management of pay as you earn, and also the establishment of risk rules in our risk management strategy, risk rules that are pertaining to PIT. The fact that we are now able to reach our taxpayer community using SMSs and reminding them is also one administration measure that has helped in reminding them to declare their income tax. So I believe one other thing is the enforcement also of EBM for all. EBM for all is an initiative where we are asking the usage of the electronic invoicing system not only by VAT registered taxpayers, but also by all traders, whether small or big, whether VAT registered or not, you've got to actually register and use the EBM, the electronic invoicing system. We do also have a requirement that's at the moment of income tax declaration that requires you to produce those EBM for your expenditures to be accepted in your income tax declaration as deductibles. They have to be supported by accompanying evidence in the EBM system of these expenses. So these are off-the-cuff answers, but I believe that digitalization played a big role, and establishment of proper risk rules related to PIT also, and being able to have that constant communication with the taxpayer community using SMSs, using emails, to remind them automatically in an automated manner. This has also played a role. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade CG from RRA, for those insightful remarks and additions. And I'm really happy that our focus and theme is going to be on digitization. It's the way to go, and we will keenly listen and engage when we get to this topic. Now, I was just doing quick consultations in terms of the agenda. We are going to break off now. I'm sure we have other comments, but they will come in as we handle the other topics on our agenda. But very important remark from our guest of honor. I was consulting him on what we could probably add on onto our agenda, and he's advised that we should share our experiences on how to bring the informal sector onto our tax registers. I'm sure we share this challenge. The biggest number of our businesses and enterprises are still informal. And informality does not mean that they don't make money or they shouldn't be part of the effort to develop the nations. So how can we do that carefully, balancing the politics and probably not overtaxing also the peasants who are not getting much from agriculture, for example, as one area of informality. So we'll try and have this as well on our agenda to share the experiences, and we can continue with the engagement even after the forum. But it's a very important area, and thank you, sir, for that comment. Now, the other comment that I have is from the Secretariat. They've taken note of the recommendations made, and they are going to have these ones included in the next report. And what we'll discuss now also that can be discussed will be put on the agenda. So in the interest of time, I would like to bring this session to a close and hand over to the MC to guide us, Comrade Bossa, on the next engagement. Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for the technical team for this report.
Thank you, CG. And our guest of honor, this brings us to the close of the first half, which I think has been splendid, a fantastic audience. We're going out for a photo moment. So the photo moment will take the stairs and go to the fountain. So we have prepared the place there, and that's where we'll get our photo moment, and thereafter tea is served. So we could have a health break and some tea, and then we will be notifying you and ushering you back shortly. Thank you very much. This has been a good half of the 50th Earacg Forum.
This thing is too short, too close, sorry.
Thank you.